Today, I'm going to show you something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. And what I'm going to talk about today is why is it that America, that the United States of America, is so special in the eyes of God. Outside of the fact that in God we trust is on our money. Outside of the fact that our Constitution is based on God. Oh, yeah. In our Pledge of Allegiance, we say one nation under God. That seem to point at this country being singled out, not above Israel, but just being singled out as a good companion for Israel. Okay? And the United States has also become the number one safe haven for the Jews. All right?
Absolutely.
There are about 6 million Jews, give or take, on the earth. 3 million are in Israel. The other 3 million, give or take, are here in the United States, with some spread out in some other countries. But majority of them are here.
Basically, the United States of America is laid out as a physical, geographic tabernacle for God's people. I'm going to say God's people, and not just Jews, but all of God's people. And the reason that is because it's his plan for the end times. And by the way, the temple in Jerusalem was laid out exactly the same way as the tent. It was just a more permanent structure.
Right.
But we want to use tabernacle because a tabernacle, or the tent, was a more temporary structure. In the United States, and I began to talk to you, so now let's look at it. We're going to look at it two ways. We're going to look at it geographically, and we're also going to look at it historically. Okay, and show you from a geographic standpoint and a historical standpoint how the United States is actually a physical and geographical tabernacle for God's people, and how that play, and then later we'll show how that plays into the end times that we're in now.
And I'm sorry, I get these thoughts. I got to jump in.
But, jump in.
Okay, what's really cool is it's a tabernacle of Moses, which was a temporary tabernacle. Okay, the Jews are here temporarily. They've been here temporarily. They've been going back to Israel, just like the Bible says. But this is a tabernacle. It's not the permanent like temple. It's just a tabernacle, and it's only temporary. All right, some of you know where I'm going with this. United States is only going to be temporary. Something's about to happen here, guys. But this is a temporary place. So Elohim sent his people to the United States into the wilderness, in a sense.
Yes, that's perfect analogy.
And they've been here for a long time. But this place here, this country, is just a tabernacle. It's just a tent. They are all returning to Israel, where we're going to have the third temple built, a physical, permanent temple with a foundation. Okay. And just keep that in mind now, all right? So this United States is just a temporary tabernacle. It's a tent, okay? Now, go ahead and...
So, that's so beautifully explained, Bob. So now what we have is the way the United States is led out. So everything that came on, back in the times of the inception of this country, you had people coming over. Now, when they come over and immigrants come over, one of the first areas that they come into is New York, and New York Harbor. Okay, so that's also shared by New York, New Jersey, whichever you want to say. But what happens is, remember I told you that the tabernacle had an area, and also did the temple, have an area called the Court of Gentiles. In other words, anyone who was outside of the nationality of Israel, okay, any peoples could come into there. Well, what happens in America? There's a thing that stands very tall, Bob, is it not? That in New York Harbor, with an inscription, "Bring us your poor, you're tired, you're weary," whatever. Then that comes in, welcoming immigrants into this country. People from all over the world come into New York. Gentiles, essentially. People who are non-Jews, non-Israel. comes in. So look at how that parallels to the court of Gentiles in the tabernacle. They come from the into the east, off of the east coast. Okay, so when you move in that way, so that is, and one of the things that's there is the sacrifice. And I'm just going to give some parallels. Some are major, some are minor. So in the court of Gentiles also is coal for burning. You need something to burn the sacrifice. And in the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, the Virginia area is a lot of coal mines. So that coal is used for the burning on the altar. It's the sacrifice. So look at that geographically. Where do you get that from? All of that activity happens in the court of Gentiles. The burning of the sacrifice. Where do you get the coal or the fire to burn the sacrifice? Right there in the court of Gentiles. That is the sacrifice. One of the things that people have to acknowledge in becoming a citizen of the United States, it's in the pledge that they have to denounce their country of origin and pledge to defend this country from all enemies. And the statement says both foreign and domestic. You know, so that is the sacrifice. Right. That's the place of sacrifice.
Even though they don't honor that,
they don't
near anymore.
But it's
actually
set
the
up.
opposite.
Yeah,
but it used to be that way.
Yeah. But what I'm showing is how it was set up, and so there is the setup of how not only historically but geographically God really allowed this thing to be set up, called the United States. The outer court also, when we move from tabernacle to a permanent structure called the temple, this is where a lot of the judgment in Israel went to. Okay, so what happened? The priest addressed the people of Israel there. The open air teaching was done there.
And Gentiles were in the outer court too.
That was the only place that Gentiles were allowed at the temple, was the outer court, which is why it is called the court of Gentiles. So now when you go off to the side a little, coming in is a laver or a basin of water, fresh water. So this is what the priest used in the tabernacle and also the temple to wash their hands before they went to do the ceremonial ministry of the temple or the tabernacle.
Okay.
Now that basin of water, if you look at, well, it depends on how it's all one thing, but you're going to get from the north, you have 5 great lakes that converge into one another. 5 being the number of grace: Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Ontario. Okay. Those 5 great lakes. Okay. The largest bodies of fresh water in the world resides within the continental United States of America. So now the outer court and the inner court, or the court of Gentiles and the sanctuary, was divided off by a walled partition.
A wall.
It was a wall part. So there was in the tabernacle, it was a wall made of fabric. In the temple, it was actually a stone wall. Okay. So now this, stretching from all the way from the upper part of the United States going all the way down to the south, there is a partition, a geographical partition known as the Mississippi River. Also, just from a prophetic standpoint. Okay. So now you have this, out of this fresh reservoir, out of grace flows this water. Five lakes, 5 being the number of grace. Out of lakes flows this great water, this fresh water. Okay. So now one of the greatest prophets, Ezekiel, saw in his vision a river running out from the altar, running out under the temple and flowing out of the temple out into the wilderness. Okay. So now once on the other side of the partition of the tabernacle and later the temple. So once you walk through the door of the temple, the same furniture that was in the tabernacle was also the same furniture used in the temple. Now, the furniture is important even in the geographic layout of the United States of America. The next piece of furniture that you have is the seven-fluted lampstand, or the great menorah. This menorah was filled with oil. The greatest concentration of oil in the United States is in Texas and Oklahoma. So historically, way back when they first discovered oil on this land of the United States, it was in Texas and Oklahoma. They hit oil. Okay, so oil, it helps burn and fuel the light of the temple, but it also fuels this country. It gives us the transportation. So oil is a great commodity in this country, and we have millions and millions of gallons of reserve in Texas. Okay, the next piece of furniture we have, if you go north, there was a table. It's funny that it would be a table, because it's a table is a platform or a slate, if you will, platform or slate that is used to eat off of. This was where the priests laid the showbread, the flatbread that they ate from. Now, the Midwest, all those states that are known as the Midwest, in the Midwest, in this country, it's also known as the breadbasket of America.
That's right.
So look at the parallel. The breadbasket of America, the showbread in the temple or in the tabernacle, is right there in the Midwest. Okay? So there's that parallel. Then as you move further into the country, you have the last piece of furniture that was in the tabernacle, and that was the brazen altar, the altar of incense. And what was on the altar of incense was coal and incense, fire. So this is where the priest would take the incense and the censer and fill it with the coals and let the smoke fill the temple, the fragrance and the smoke. So what we have in that part of the country is Utah and surrounding states, which is known for its coal reserves, the greatest concentration of coal, all these coal mines. That coal is what represents the altar of incense. That's the last thing that the priest has before he goes into the holy place.
Now, what's really cool, Larry, we're talking about this right now, the temple. We're talking about the secret place.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that the song on a radio just came on the hotel is "Take Me Away to That Secret Place." As you're talking,
so we're right in
it.
front of that secret place. We're
I know,
really.
I just had to say it because they're playing that song.
Yeah,
Take Me
that's
Away
great.
to That Secret Place. I was like, that's the Holy Spirit confirming this
absolutely.
message right now. Absolutely. So after that, after the coal, what do we have?
We try to move on into the most holy place. But before we get to that, we have a partition, yet another partition that separates the sanctuary or the inner court from the Holy of Holies or the most holy place. The partition that is in the United States, the Rocky Mountain chain separates the inner court or the sanctuary from the Holy of Holies or the most holy place. The Rocky Mountain chain is that partition or is that veil. Now, I want to point out that historically, during the gold rush and during the land rush of the early 1800s, all the way up to the mid 1800s, many people tried to go out west, and they always had a problem trying to cross the Rocky Mountains. Many people, many settlers died trying to cross over the Rocky Mountains, trying to get to the west. So there's that parallel of a dangerous, treacherous, or heavy-weighted partition that was hard to cross. The reason it was hard to cross in the sanctuary because a priest had to be ceremonially prepared. In this country, you had to have all of your provisions. You had to have enough food. You had to have enough stronger horses and all of this to cross over. So if you didn't have your stuff together, you 9 times out of 10 you died right there trying to cross the mountain. So after the veil, you have the Holy of Holies. Now, the furniture that is in the Holy of Holies is the Ark of the Covenant, where God chose to use the Ark to show his power through Israel. And so the priests always carried this Ark into battle. They always had, but the resting place of the Ark resided in the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies, and later on the temple, which was also called the Holy of Holies, in that place. And then it had a what was called a mercy seat on it, where the 2 cherubs rested on top to guard. And oftentimes it was said that the presence of God hovered above the mercy seat in the Holy of Holies. Remember what the Ark of the Covenant is made of. 2 materials, wood and gold. Originally constructed so many cubits, made of wood, and then overlaid or plated with pure gold. The biggest commodities in not only California and those surrounding states like Nevada, gold, but when they first got out there, the forests, trees, acres upon acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of woods and trees.
Now, it comes to my mind when you're saying that, isn't it interesting, where does Satan have his throne at? California.
Yes.
Where's the Ark of the Covenant represented at? California. The Ark of the Covenant is a throne of God. Where else do we have the most highest authority of all of how things are conducted in this country? Hollywood. Hollywood decides everything's for his country, how we should act. California, politically, whatever's established there first becomes law eventually for the land. Well, Satan always wanted to be like God. Well, Satan said, I will send to the highest heavens to the north side.
And there are Hollywood Hills.
Hollywood Hills. So there we are. Satan's throne, liberal, left throne is established in California. That's where all the stars are. Hello. And all the money, wealth, Beverly Hills, the richest part of the country.
Bob, can I interject something here? Because while you're on this thought, because you're on a great thing, people don't understand, and we may not know that Hollywood wasn't just an arbitrary name. It comes from a place in Rome, or actually in Italy, not too far from Rome, that was called Hollywood.
Oh yeah?
The actual iteration of it is holy wood.
Holy wood.
The holy wood.
Ooh.
Yes.
So we got the trees there, we got the gold there, the Holy of Holies.
And the signage, that the hill that the Hollywood, now, it's almost bare now, but when they first originally put that sign, that Hollywood sign up there, there was much more trees and foliage on that hill. And it almost looks exactly like the hill in Italy of where that's named. There is a pool in that same town that the Hollywood name comes from, which is the pool of Diana. It's called Diana's Mirror, where the goddess Diana was worshipped. So, and you see this. Are you starting to see this?
That's
picture
amazing.
Here?
It's not by just not by coincidence, not by some random thought that this place was called Hollywood. This place was built and established by Satan, and you know what? The Bible says that all things were established in the heavens and the earth. God established everything. He knew exactly what the layout of the United States was going to be, and what He was going to use it for, and everything. And that's why we're having this conversation about it right now.
Satan tries to come in and
take it,
pervert it.
Yeah, Satan came in.
Does everything.
Well, this country's all set up. I can see it's obviously it's layout of the temple, God. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plop myself down here where your throne is at and take control of this country and completely pervert it. And of course, isn't it interesting though that Hollywood and California is experiencing record number of wildfires?
What's getting burned?
All the wood. And I think
this year, 2018, represents a few firsts historically. First of all, it represents the largest wildfire in the United States history.
It's
the largest wildfire,
been.
biggest it's ever been. The second first that it represents is the amount of acres that have ever been burned at one time.
And you know what? While you're saying that, what happened when Jesus said that this temple would, when it gets destroyed, not one stone be left upon another?
Wow.
What happened is when the temple got burned down, all the wood burned, and then all the wood got burned up in the temple. All the gold was left. No wood survived. So right now, God is in the process right now of burning Satan's throne. Right now, he's showing it's a sign
California
of what's
and
to come.
All of those there burning
All
and
that wood up right
wildfires.
Now. He's just showing. Look, he's showing them. Hey, look, man, I'm taking you down piece by piece, and as a sign, all the wood is being burned up now. The Lord is showing them, hey, you know what? I destroyed the first temple. I destroyed the second temple, and I'm certainly not going to keep this tent. Because I'm going back to Israel.
Yeah.
When he deals with the Israelites during the tribulation. So this tent I have here, I'm almost done with this. So guess what? I'm going to start burning the wood.
Wow.
The whole tent's going to fall. And right now we are at the verge of the 7-year tribulation, and this is why we're seeing these massive wildfires. There has to be another. I mean,
not only that, Bob, but the greatest concentration of earthquakes in this country originate on the San Andreas Fault in California.
Amen.
So they're either burning or they're shaking.
Burning or shaking.
Burning or shaking. And is that interesting that in the Holy of Holies that God's presence often when they were on the mountain in Israel, Mount Sinai, it was burning and shaking. The earthquake and smoke. The incense goes into the priest, the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies with the incense from the altar and takes it into the holy place with him to allow the smoke to fill. Well, what's a byproduct of fire? Smoke.
And if you get onto Google Earth right now or any satellite floating above California, what do you have? Smoke.
Absolutely.
And earthquakes.
So look at this. This is what's happening.
And another thing I want to point out too now is the veil. Now,
or partitions.
First thing I want to say is this: what happened when Yeshua died on the cross? The veil ripped.
Yes.
Can we see a physical manifestation of this veil rip? We already see the wood burning. So can a veil rip? The San Andreas Fault will rip. All right, just like it did when the Spirit of the Lord left the temple. The San Andreas Fault will rip, and the New Madrid Fault will rip. All right, so that fault line's right there as well. And my guess is, looking at that fault line, is that fault line eventually is going to give as well. And let's say it did. That fault line gave. And if you look here in this illustration here in front of you guys, you can see it. If that fault line gave, and all of a sudden it separated the outer court of the Gentiles from the inner court. Remember what it says in the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 2. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it was given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be tread under foot 42 months. So this outer court is separated from the inner court and Holy of Holies. And so it was separated. So it's in the possibility that eventually down the road, that New Madrid Fault, whether it separates at the rapture or whether it's a part of the sixth seal earthquake that's done, where it's a massive earthquake worldwide. It's the biggest earthquake the earth has ever seen. If that happened, if it's going to happen, when it does happen, I guarantee you this: the New Madrid Fault and the San Andreas will split, because both of those fault lines are on a hair trigger right now. And if you're going to shake this world up, the greatest it's ever been shaken up all around the world, I promise you, those faults are going to go whoop,
Well,
spread wide open.
Look at this, and this is just a food for thought, Bob. While you're talking on that, and we're alike. When Revelation comes, we start. But the revelation came to me is now look at where the New Madrid Fault lies in the Midwest. Okay, and what did we say that the Midwest was considered? The Midwest is considered the breadbasket of America. That's what the saying is. So the thing is that would also devastate the food supply in this country as far as it pertains to grain and bread and crops
and worldwide.
So it's not just us, but all of our exports that we ship to other countries, all of the grains, all of the crops, the soybeans, the corn, all of that ends up going to other countries as well as feeding us. What does that do to the world economy? What does that do to the food supply in the world? Those are things to think about. I'm not saying that that's how it's going to happen because no one really knows exactly all of the details of how, but it's food for thought.
So you can see now, guys, how the United States is a temporary tabernacle for God. And like I said, it's on our money, it's on our Constitution, it's in the Pledge of Allegiance. God's name is still all over this place.